this, but this gives you all the latest science. It gives you all the cool stuff that we've been learning that we want to tell you about that's going to embolden your witness, that's going to deepen your faith. This is absolutely free. It comes to your house at no charge. All you have to do is sign up for it. The question is this: why? Why would I want you to do this? Because Dr. Thomas just spoke. And with the regular speaker, you're going to remember about 10% of what he says, okay? Now, Dr. Thomas is an exceptional speaker. You're going to remember a good 10.5%, okay? So, but if we can connect you to a source of information so that you can continue to educate yourself, continue to be inspired, continue to be encouraged, that's the real key. That's why we give this to you for free. So right outside these doors are 2 stations where you can sign up for Acts and Facts. And again, this comes to you absolutely free. Just a couple of things. We have the Dinosaur Activity Book. This was actually done. This is a cool one. I like stories. This is a cool one because there's 2 people in our Discovery Center that created this for us. During COVID, do you realize we didn't lay anybody off? We kept everybody. And so we just found projects for people. And so this is a cool one. Bethany and Benjamin created the Dinosaur Activity Book. It's $6. It has all kinds of activities for your kids to do. You got to pick this one up. It is awesome. It's so cool. And they get excited when people get this one because they know that what they did is doing something. So be sure and pick that one up. Did you talk about why the world looks so young? Dr. Thomas wrote a book, Why the World Looks So Young, because we talk about dinosaurs and how they're not 66 million years old, but then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in the world that we'd have to look at, right? Well, that's the kind of stuff that Dr. Thomas is talking about. Why the world looks so young. We've got just a few copies left over there at the table. And then Uncovering the Truth About Dinosaurs. This is a 4 DVD set. I don't know if this is true. Do you know if this is true? We spent $1 million on this? Not true. We spent $999,000 on this. That's not verifiable, but it's a 4 DVD set. It's TV quality. It's narrated by a guy named Marcus Lloyd. It is awesome. I bought this before I ever worked for ICR, and I loved it. So this is one of those things, if you've got a dinosaur lover in your family, or if you are that dinosaur lover, this is the gift that you get them. It's sitting out there at the table. So I won't keep talking because I know we've got some questions that we want to ask Dr. Thomas. I'm going to have Dr. Thomas come on up, and he might actually just sit on the side of the stage or something. I don't know. We'll see. Nope, he's coming up here. All right. So, Dr. Thomas, there is one question that I wanted to ask because I've actually heard it a couple of times already, and I hear it from people. As a matter of fact, I was in Carrollton, and I went to the Mac store, and I was talking to this guy about Macs because I am Mac everything, okay? I don't know if you know that Apple is the preferred computing power in heaven. I don't know if you know that or not, but it is. And I was talking to a guy about Macs, and he asked me what I do, and I'm like, I work at the Discovery Center, talking about, dinosaurs, stuff like that. And he goes, yeah, if you believe in them. I was like, I'm sorry, what? What do you mean if you believe in them? Well, he was saying, well, look, you don't ever find a full, real dinosaur in a museum. It's all replicas. You've never actually seen one, have you? And I'm like, well, yeah, I have actually, because there's one at the Discovery Center, and I can point it out to you. But what I found is that it's by no fault of people's own, they have gotten this concept because there's so many replicas, because they're given information without being able to see it. They kind of go, I don't know that I can trust that. And so if you might just talk for just a second about, our dinosaurs and stuff like that, and just to reassure people.
Yeah, sure. So dinosaurs really did exist. They left their bones behind. And most of the replicas in museums, including most of the replicas in our Discovery Center, they are replicas, not because we're trying to obfuscate or hide the truth, or not because we're trying to invent a world of dinosaurs, but because people mess stuff up. And we don't want to put the real things out there because people will steal it. I mean, it's worth millions of dollars, some of these fine specimens. So they're at the museums, but they're just in the back. And so they make an exact copy of those bones that were pulled out of the ground. And I think though what we have really is there's a general skepticism about science, about scientists, especially since the COVID years. But even before then, we have Christians who have a skepticism about dinosaur fossils because it's hard, because we're associating the fossils with a dinosaur age and with eons of death and evolution. But you don't have to associate dinosaurs with any of those things because the Bible has a flood, and the flood explains the dinosaurs. And so once we have that, once we have a place in the scripture, in biblical history, for dinosaurs to have lived and died and gone extinct, then I think maybe more Christians would be willing to go on a dig with me. And we can actually look at dinosaur bones. And the reason we know they're dinosaur bones is because they're uniquely shaped. And even though usually you just find a fragment of one bone, very rarely do you find two bones still articulated. And even more rarely do you find three or more, or most of a carcass. That's the find of a lifetime. Just like 50% of a dinosaur carcass is the find of a lifetime for paleontologists. So, but when we do find that fragment, right, we can bring that over to the more complete specimen, and we can compare the two, and they match. So this fragment looks exactly like that corresponding part in a more complete specimen, and that's how we have confidence that the bones were real and that they were dinosaurs. Is that kind of what you're asking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, let me ask you this. You know, he mentioned this, so he started it. If I was to set up a dinosaur dig, to go dig with Dr. Thomas, who would be interested in doing that? Okay, I thought so. I just want to make sure. So when I'm convincing our president that we're going to do this, I can back it up with some people. So look for that. 2024, I'm looking to create 2 different dinosaur digs for that. So check our website and sign up for Acts and Facts because you'll get the emails about those events as well. So, well, that was the question I had. Does anybody else have a question? I'm going to come down now. There's two rules to my Q&A. Number 1, when you start talking, there must be a question mark at the end of it. Okay? And number 2, only I hold the microphone. It's not anything personal, but I hold it because I have had people grab that microphone and they are off to the races. So not that it's any of y'all. Y'all would be different, I promise, but just in case. I'm going to go here and then we'll come back this way.
Hi, I just had a question about carbon-14. If it's not entirely accurate, why do secular scientists continue to use it?
Yeah, good question. So it turns out that it's very often accurate, going back to maybe 3,000 years into the past. And the reason we know that it's accurate for 2,000 or 3,000 years ago is that we can cross-check it with other dating methodologies. So it's useful in the area of archaeology, where they're looking at human remains, materials from ancient people. And what did they leave behind? They left pottery behind. And it turns out that there's characteristic types of pottery that characterize specific people groups and times in certain places. They also left behind like coins. So you can date something from the time of Christ 2,000 years ago with radiocarbon, but then there's also a Roman coin with an emperor's likeness on that coin. And so you can narrow down the age of that stratum or that thin layer that has those artifacts in it, both by the coins, the pottery, as well as the carbon dating. So you have multiple independent lines of dating that gives us confidence that radiocarbon can be trustworthy. But when we compare the coins and the other parallel methodologies with radiocarbon from very, very ancient, going back before the Exodus, it turns out that there is a systematic divergence between the calendar age and the radiocarbon age. So something was going on back then. We suspect it had something to do with the after effects of Noah's flood. We think that the flood affected the Earth's magnetic field, which would have totally disrupted the production rate of radiocarbon in the atmosphere. So I know I just went sort of on a super nerdy bend at the end of that question. So let me just say, get our book, Which book would have this? How about Creation Basics and Beyond? And there's a chapter in there on radiocarbon that explains some of these things. And then we also have plenty of free articles that discuss this systematic divergence between calendar ages and carbon ages. They're different. They can be very different. And we have reasons as to why. And so that's on our website, icr.org. Great place to ask questions in the question box there on the website.
Awesome. Okay, here we go. Here's the next one.
Do I have to stand? No. Okay, good. You mentioned that the collagen part where you're finding the connective tissue and the blood. Are they actually thinking about trying to clone some of this stuff and bringing it back?
Well, only with the mammoth. Only with the mammoth. So no one's actually, to my knowledge, thinking of cloning a dinosaur because we don't have a dinosaur womb to receive a dinosaur egg, and we don't have a dinosaur mother to have that womb. In other words, you need a dinosaur to make a dinosaur. And so, the reason we can dream about doing that with a woolly mammoth is because we think the secularists who are doing it, there's a team out of Japan working on it now, is because we're convinced that that's just a hairy elephant. So it's part of the created elephant kind. So because we still have living representatives, we have mothers with wombs, so we can possibly maybe resurrect some of those traits anyways. But the DNA, even from the Siberian permafrost, now these are mammoths that we're convinced lived after the flood, during the Ice Age. And so this is Ice Age remnants. So it would be, anyway, Ice Age, so it died maybe a few thousand years ago, maybe hundreds, well, a few thousand, and then it was cold, and it's been cold ever since. So that would have helped preserve enough of that DNA to maybe clone a woolly mammoth. Although I'm not going to hold my breath on that because I would pass out before they got it cloned.
All right, but it would be fun. All right, here we go.
The question is concerning examples of humans within the fossil record. We've got the texts, such as the scripture and other ancient texts that talk about dragons, behemoth, leviathan, etc., plus all those great examples that are on the wall of the ICR that shows, such as the examples you showed earlier. Are there any substantial bits of evidence within the fossil record that would show any examples of humankind alongside dinosaurs and other fossilized creatures?
I don't know of any defensible human remains that are found among dinosaur remains. But I wouldn't really expect to find them either, because in the flood model, I mean, we have these. So what do we find when we do our digs? We see, along with dinosaurs, we have lots of water creatures like swamp creatures and ducks, like water birds, and then we see frogs fossilized with them, and then shrimp, and then water plants, turtles, soft-shell turtles, hard-shell turtles, lots of clams, shark teeth, all with the dinosaurs. So we don't see humans, but nor do we see dogs, deer, or anything that lives on hard ground. And so our model of the flood basically has it that the lowest rock layers have seafloor creatures, not because they were the first to have evolved, but because they were already stuck on the seafloor when the flood started. So they couldn't get away. And then the next higher up layers have armored fishes because they have armor. They can't get away as fast. And then the next is regular fishes. And then, by the way, there's plenty of fish fossils with the dinosaurs also. So as the floodwaters are rising, month after month, finally they reach the margins of the Earth's original, I think it was a single landmass that God had created. And then, so along the margins of that continent, we have tons and tons and tons of shallow marine. So the sea, imagine an ocean the size of North and South America, and it's like 15 feet to 30 feet deep, just forever and ever, as far as you can see. And so most fossils are shallow marine because, and we think that's because the floodwaters came up onto these shallow continent margin areas and inundated those creatures next, Finally, it gets into the swamps and dinosaurs. And finally, after that, the uppermost layers would be the hard ground living creatures like deer, dogs, and humans. So where are those? Well, we need to look for them. I think the Cenozoic layers might have human remains in them. There's camels, that's hard ground living. And, but the thing is that those are really rare. Most of those fossils are actually underwater, they're offshore, because I think that they represent the floodwaters receding off the surface of the earth and tearing up and redepositing offshore what had just been laid down some weeks or months earlier. But some of that, as the water is receding off, mountains are also coming up at the same time, so some of that water got stuck and trapped behind the mountains, and that's how we get, I think, the Green River Formation, which has alligators and palm trees and tons of fish. So anyway, there might be some locations where wherever there's camels in a broad rock layer that looks like it's flood deposited, that's where I would look. But they're so rare to find those places and to have access to them. And if an evolutionary scientist did find a human remain in one of those sites that they have labeled as 40 million years old, are they going to call it human? And I'm suggesting that they might not be able to process that. And one reason I suggest that is because I saw a paper, I read the paper in the journal Science about a fossil that was they estimated it at, based on the rock layer that it's in and the age assignment in a chart that's in a book. That's the process they use. It's not scientific, sorry. They said this got to be 6 million years old before humans had yet evolved. And so they compared the anatomy of this foot bone to modern chimpanzees, extinct apes, and modern gorilla. And they said this foot bone is not like chimps, it's not like gorilla, it's not like extinct, it's exactly like modern humans. And so I read they did all these analyses, 6 different analyses, the twist of it, the shape of it, the diameter, all the ratios, all this stuff. And then the last little paragraph at the end said, therefore we conclude that there was an ape walking around with human feet. And I was walking around the offices at ICR just laughing because that's good science, it's great descriptive science, but then they took a nosedive when it comes to the interpretation. So if they're gonna balk at a human, and it was a human 4th metatarsal, this bone right here, and so if they're going to balk at a human 4th metatarsal and pretend that it belonged to an ape, if it's only 6 million years old, what would they do with remains of humans that are even older in their scheme? So we have a problem of bias trying to interpret these fossils. Boy, if you guys ask me a question, that's obviously going to take me millions of years to get an answer out. Boy, so but any of you young kids want to go into paleontology? We need you to look for the human fossils, and I would say now that we know that the Cenozoic is flood deposited, look in the Cenozoic.
Awesome. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Because this is Texas, I need to ask an oil and gas question. So can you give us some insight into how we believe as believers in the Word, the shale deposits were created? And because we're told that it's millions of years of heat and decay, through your lens and what we should be telling the world, how are those shale deposits created?
Are you saying the word shale?
Shale, like the oil shales.
Oh,
Yes.
oil shales.
Oil and gas deposits.
Yeah, so oil shales are really easy to talk about for a Bible believer, in my opinion, in the context of the flood, and for 2 big reasons. Number one, the shale deposits that we have, a shale is like a sedimentary rock made of fine-grained sediment, and the shale deposits that we actually have are broadly extensive, hundreds of square miles. Now, where today do we have fine sediment being deposited in a flat layer that extends hundreds of square miles? Nowhere. So we might have a river flood and overflow its banks, and we get some sort of mud deposit on the bank, but that's always within a river valley. We're not talking about the shales that we're looking at underground from which we extract the oil. Those shales extend for hundreds of square miles. I mean, you can drive for days, 2 days of driving before you get from one end of the rock layer to another for some of these shales. Now, because that's so extensive and it doesn't happen anywhere today that way, sedimentation, deposition doesn't happen, but it happened everywhere in the past, kind of like fossils. This is easy to talk about in terms of, in terms of the flood. So what would the flood have done? It would have had tsunamis big enough to cover continents, just wash over the whole continent and carry sediment with it. And that's what we think happened in tsunami after tsunami. Think of like a super tsunami, something like that. And in fact, think of the sediments that were deposited in the 2011 Japan tsunami, where whatever that tsunami came in, whatever was in its path was just obliterated. Okay, and the second reason it's easy to talk about shales and oil shales from a flood perspective is that the oil itself contains chlorophyll from the algae from whence it came. So you can identify the location of the original source of an oil from a can of oil. If you have the right chemistry set, you can identify the particular organic chlorophyll molecules and which oil deposit, has that specific signature in it. So if it's a Venezuelan oil or a Siberian oil, you can tell based on the chemistry. And what is it? It's a biochemistry. Well, how in the world does chlorophyll last any longer than several thousand years? It should be gone. In fact, bacteria should have eaten up all this oil. Bacteria love to eat oil. We had the oil spills about a decade ago in the Gulf, and the environmentalists come out and they decry, shame, shame. Now it's going to forever blast the whole biosphere in the Gulf. Well, within a few months, these globules had developed of bacteria that just ate away the oil. They had a bacteria bloom that ate the oil, and it was all cleaned up in a year because God designed the biosphere to clean up oil, and he designed certain bacteria to eat oil. And so why do we have any oil? And there's no place underground where we haven't found bacteria. They're everywhere. And so we shouldn't have bacteria. We shouldn't have oil if it's millions of years old because it's organic and the laws of chemistry, it should have decayed. We shouldn't have oil on a second count because bacteria should have eaten it. And we shouldn't have oil in shale because we shouldn't have these shale layers because they don't form today. So the flood explains all these features of shale oils.
Awesome. Okay, we have the hardest question. Are you ready?
What would it taste like?
Can you repeat?
What would dinosaurs taste like?
Oh, well, we just experienced that, so. Chicken. Have you ever had alligator? I would taste alligator. Maybe it was similar to that, kind of swampy.
So my question is, when we did the tour at ICR and we met a scientist who was writing a book using an alias name, could you just explain why this is necessary and how we as a church can pray for him and y'all?
Can you give me some help?
He's talking about Clary's assistant, Aiden.
Oh. Yeah, so we have a student, and he wants to get a degree or more, one or more degrees in the secular institutions, which we applaud him for that. But if he were to try to enter, let's say, a graduate program, and he was already known with his name and his likeness on our website, for example, if he was known in those ways, he would be labeled a creationist and therefore, by definition, a non-scientist. And he would be potentially now disallowed from even entering the program, or even worse, and this has happened many times in our nation's recent history, they get in the program and then they do 10 years of graduate work, and then their supervising professor finds their name and likeness on a creation website. You wrote a creation paper, you are no longer, we're not going to let you graduate. So my colleagues have lost their jobs. I was expelled. I lost my job because of my beliefs in creation. And so yeah, it's a real part of this world. So in order to protect his future wisely, I think he is he's using a pseudonym when he writes for creation circles. So when we publish his works in our magazine, Acts and Facts, we use his pseudonym, but then he uses his real name for the secular institution. But one day he'll be able to flip the switch and say, you know what, I'm going to have a career now with, taking a stand with creation, and now that he has his degrees. And so people do that, and I think it's a good idea.
Hey, Dave, I'm sorry. The sound team has questions, so I'm hijacking the sound so we can ask questions.
God? Yes, sir?
So I have a real quick question. I had it before, but the question earlier about the oil is relevant. In a young Earth model, is petroleum fuels and oil-based fuels, energy sources, is that a sustainable energy model, a source?
Okay, so is oil sustainable?
Is it still being produced? Is it sustainable? As an energy source? Is there any reason to be concerned about it that it'll run out? Does that answer?
I'm just trying to download the latest
That's a question.
sustainability figures.
Oh, sorry.
Beep, 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 beep. Well, I think, of course, oil companies are very interested to know about the sustainability of their resource, their main resource. So I think they've projected it out to 2050. But then we started fracking, and that just extended the projections, doubled them. Because if you pump salt water or whatever, fluid, you can squeeze out the oil from in between the sand grains, and you can get a lot more oil. So there's more oil embedded in these sand oil, what do they call them? Oil sands, than there are in like fluid, like liquid oil reserves. So even when we run out of those, there's still plenty underground. It just takes more effort to pull it out. So I don't know the latest figures, but it's certainly sustainable for many years to come. And of course, they've studied all that with the growth trajectories of how many people are going to be born and how many cars they're going to use and how much oil we're going to need to do all that stuff. And eventually, eventually we would run out, but it's not in our lifetime.
I have one as well.
It's the Holy Spirit now.
Yes. I met a guy in San Diego, I think he's working with the ICR out there, who was taking a trip to Turkey near Iran to view an eclipse, hoping to get a good look inside the Ahura Gorge for possibly the remains of Noah's Ark, and speculating what a major news story that would be if that was found. Is that anything ICR is looking into as far as locating Noah's Ark?
Right, so we have, we're not directly doing that anymore. Of course, that was our former president and the late, great Dr. John Morris. He took 12 trips to Mount Ararat in the late 70s and in the 80s. And so we handed off that project to other groups who have been steadily trekking as often as they could. Of course, every time they have an expedition, which is only during, I think, 1 month, I think it's August maybe, September, when the snow melts back on Mount Ararat far enough to explore the Ahura Gorge, which is almost hard. It's almost impossible to explore. Now that we have drones, though, maybe it's possible. But anyway, there's war and factions, and there was a coup of President Erdogan just a number of years ago, and then he had a counter coup and revenge killings, and so in fact our friend's Turkey informant was murdered in that whole process, and so it's like 1 step forward, 3 steps back. So it would be nice to find remnants of Noah's Ark, although honestly, we have plenty of us in our offices who doubt that we would expect to find any bits or pieces of it anymore. The only reason we do is because there's 4 eyewitness accounts that are independent, and they seem to tell the same story, but that was back in the 40s and 50s, and then again in the 60s. So maybe we need to wait for the ice to melt back more, and maybe it's up there, I don't know. But there are teams working on that, and they communicate with us their progress. And the last decade has been the communication with us has really centered around the trials and the difficulties and the murders. And unjust, one of the lead guys, Dr. Patton, it's like, in Turkey, you can just buy off the government. It's corruption is rampant. So someone purchased a gag order on him to disallow him from the country. So he was stuck in the airport for several days and had to come back to the U.S., even though he had the whole expedition lined up. So all kinds of drama. It's mostly drama, no evidence. But we could pray for that. Okay, back to Earth.
All right, back to your regular programming. Here we go.
Okay. We spoke earlier, Brian and I did, about what I was given a misquote from Darwin that if there were no transitional fossil forms, then his theory was in vain, and you corrected me on that. I'd like you to expound on that.
Yeah, thank you. So he has chapter 4 in his book, Origin of Species, 1859. It's been a minute. Anyway, back then he said in chapter 4 that one of the strongest arguments that can be brought up against my theory is that there are no transitional forms, and in fact, most fossils should show transitions between one kind and another. And instead, we find discrete forms. It's either this kind or that kind. And he admitted that. But he said that doesn't discount my theory because we would not expect to see, he says, how convenient that we wouldn't expect to see evolution in the fossils. So he was a really good storyteller. But he did admit in a different chapter in that same book that something about if it could be demonstrated that any, does anyone know this quote? That any living machine, living organism existed that could not possibly have been brought together by numerous successive slight modifications. It's not an exact quote, but then my theory would absolutely break down. So he gave us a test for his theory, and it had to do with engineering in biology. And of course, we have since discovered irreducibly complex machinery in biochemicals. For example, biochemical motors that spin and change direction and have gears in them. And use magnets. So magnetism and so the use of these motors in our bodies even the design of them is too specific for even Darwin to swallow. So we wonder what he would think of his own theory if he had access to today's awesome information.
All right, we just have a couple more questions. Don't only have time for just a couple more questions, but I'll get to you because you're going to help me in just a minute to give away some stuff as well. So you'll be last, okay?
Out of all the animals on the ark, why do you think the dinosaurs died out and the rest survived?
I did that. I had to sneeze once, and a friend of mine, I was about to sneeze. He goes, "I'll give you a quarter if you don't sneeze." And then my sneeze went away, and he goes, if you do sneeze, I'll give you. I never got the money. What a bum. Well, as I tried to mention in my presentation, it wasn't just the dinosaurs. It was mammal-like reptiles and a host of other whole groups of creatures gone. The short answer is I don't really know, but extinctions post-flood, I think, are best explained by the same two main explanations that cause extinctions today, and that is change in a creature's environment and interaction with humans. So humans, when we move in, traditionally, historically, we always get rid of the biggest animals first, and it's a shame, and we don't provide, it's a shame to me that we don't provide them with sanctuaries, with enough sanctuaries. So the more sanctuaries, I think, would be good, but I digress. So when we move in, we remove the threat. You got to do that because you don't want T-Rex eating up your grandkids, and the like. And then we do recognize that the ice age happened after the flood, and that a lot of the places where dinosaurs lived during the ice age was like the Middle East, where it was tropical and wet. But when the ice age ended, it dried out in the Middle East. So the habitat loss from climate change is one way I could express that. I think helped lead to the ultimate demise of those creatures in different parts around the world at different times. So habitat loss, human interaction, that's what makes extinctions today. I think that's what made extinctions in the past.
All right, here we go.
I have a question. You're saying that, I was wondering if all the dinosaurs had extended necks and stuff on there, on the dinosaurs that have been found. So that they possibly could have, before microevolution, they might have had teeth not like that. Instead, they were vegetarians, and they were at different levels, and God created them with different levels so they could eat off the different vegetation and stuff.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that ended with a question mark, but I acknowledge that possibility. So let me just ping pong off of that real quick. We have T-Rex right here. Now it's a Tyrannosaurid, so we would classify it maybe in the family Tyrannosauridae, which includes Acrocanthosaurus, Gorgonopsid, anyway, lots of other Oruses. I'm not good at dinosaur names, I'm just good at dinosaur proteins, but anyway. So we have a suite of large, medium, small, Albertosaurus is one, Albinosaurus is not one. That's fake. So Albertosaurus, it's just because it's got smaller teeth than T-Rex, and it was found in Alberta, so they have to give it a new name and call it a new species, because then that's how they get their fame and funding to do research. So that's where the naming comes from a lot of times. But they all have the same body plan. This little thing here, and the whole setup that makes it Tyrannosaurid. So I think God designed, just like he designed humans, to diversify. We have tall people, we have short people, we have all kinds of variety in humankind. We had the same kind of variety within each created kind, and I think the Tyrannosaurids is just one example of the 70 or so originally created dinosaur kinds. And so why would God do that? Why would God make creatures that could reproduce and have a variation in their offspring so that the next generation looked basically the same, but maybe a little bit different in certain aspects? He did it with plants too. And why would he do that? Two reasons. One, he loves creativity, and he wants us to see it and give him credit and glory for his creative work. Because he's not just making robot clones like we would be able to do. He's making creatures that can alter their traits between generations a little bit. Sorry, not a little bit, but in specific ways, to specific degrees that he has pre-programmed into those creatures. Second reason I think he did that is because he foreknew, doesn't God foreknow? He foreknew the situations and the environments that these descendants would encounter. And so he wanted to equip these creatures when he originally set them up with feature options that would crack the code of whatever new environment would come about. And so if it's a cold environment, he wants to give them with the option of a layer of blubber or thicker hair. So that's what cats do. Think of a lion's mane. If it's a warmer environment, traits that fit a warmer environment, etc. And so in other words, he programmed creatures and us to adapt to specific degrees in specific traits for specific reasons. And that's what Darwinists have grabbed onto, or that little bitty micro shift. They'll say, oh, now the creature has more scales, evolution in action. And we're saying, no, God did that. He created that so that the creature would detect its surroundings, realize it needed to make another generation that had more scales, and then it does it specifically. Now that's engineering at a whole new level. And we should glorify our Creator for that.
Awesome. Okay, last question, and then I'm going to have that young man meet me up on stage. We're going to give some stuff away.
All right, Dr. Thomas, first of all, thank you for taking your time to come out and talk to us. This definitely exceeded my expectations by a large margin. My question has to do with, we've covered a lot of dinosaurs. My question has specifically to do with hominids, similar to humans. So we look at Neanderthals, which, the secular world says they've died out, I think something like 40,000 years ago. That their brain cavity was much larger, I think something like 2,200 cubic centimeters or something. Different bones and hips, femurs. However, I think they found a hybridized one, traits that shows both humans and Neanderthals in Israel about 12,000 years ago or something like that. How do you explain those different types of hominids? Also with DNA testing the past 20 years, it seems like the average European has approximately 2% Neanderthal DNA. Average East Asian has about 1% Homo denisovian DNA. I'm mixed race, so I probably have a little bit of both maybe. I don't know. So how do we explain that? And then also mitochondrial DNA.
How many questions is this?
Okay. Well, that's one question. Yeah, that's just the main one. And also mitochondrial DNA. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so in answer to your 3 questions, I appreciate you coming out, and I'm glad that you set your expectations basement level so that we could exceed them. Appreciate that today. But I want us to consider the word hominid itself, and if you look up the definition, it says a category that includes both humans and their most immediate evolutionary ancestors. So this very word has a definition that includes and assumes evolution. And I don't include or assume evolution when I look at fossil bones. So I don't like calling them hominids for that reason. So that's just sort of a preamble. But when it comes to Neanderthals, we have long said that they were just humans, variety of humankind. And it's been gratifying over the decade and a half that I've worked with ICR. I've been able to write news articles on Neanderthals whenever the news comes out. For example, the find that you mentioned with the Israel half-breed. So it's anatomically modern human, someone with a body, bone shapes that would look like yours or mine. But then Neanderthal was a group of people that had a particular shape to certain bones, sloping forehead being one, prominent brow ridges another. Sometimes they had a sagittal crest. But it turns out that those 3 features are in today's population just spread out. But back then, they were all in one small population. I think they lived during the Ice Age because their remains are buried in caves that are in southern Europe, so the ice sheet came down halfway down Europe. So the only part of Europe that was exposed and accessible was the southernmost part. So that's why they're around the Mediterranean, north of the Mediterranean. So we've been saying that they're anatomically human. And we agree with evolutionists who have said the same things. These are anatomically human. They're just, and in fact, the traits that make them unique are actually in our modern humans. They're not common, but they're still in us, most of those traits. And so when they sequenced Neanderthal DNA in like 2010, and they said this is 97% DNA, human, 97% similar to modern human DNA. I mean, that's like saying it's human DNA. But we were saying that, and then when we found burials, every news cycle comes out and says, wow, they were more human-like than we thought. Well, they buried their dead intentionally. No animal does that. No apes do that. And then they had, tools. They had made fire. There's bone flutes, and they had musical instruments, and they had. So when they intermarried, why not call it intermarriage? I mean, can an Asian person intermarry a European ancestry person? That's a possibility, right? Okay, I'm looking at one. So can a Neanderthal person marry someone who would look like a later European? Absolutely, he could have. And in fact, that's what we found in that burial site was Neanderthal traits on the dad, modern traits on the mom, and the kids were there too, and they had a mixture of those 2 features. So anyway, all that to say, descendant of Noah, living after the flood, Why were they in caves? Well, guys, during the Ice Age, forests hadn't yet had a chance to grow, because we're talking right after the world was turned into a ball of mud. And so it takes some hundreds of years for forests to grow, and that's your main source of building material for houses and huts. So until then, you got to find a cave or dig a hole somewhere. So we think we think the Neanderthals were pioneers into southern Europe during the Ice Age after the flood, descendants of Noah and Adam. Amen. It fits.
Awesome.
It fits, and there's a lot more. And you asked about the DNA, but I think I'm out of time. Fortunately for me, because I don't know much about the DNA.
I was going to say, you can always ask him later if he was right. Yeah. I was just joking around. Sorry about that. But all right. Are you okay coming on stage with me? All right, come on up. Dr. Thomas, thank you so much. Let's give Dr. Thomas a hand. All right, now keep your microphone on, Dr. Thomas, because I believe, come on over this way. Oh, do you have your cell phone with you? You should stand right over here with the T-Rex. Stand right here. Now stick your head inside its mouth, just like that. There you go. Now take a picture of that. That's good. Now everybody's like, man, I wish I could go on stage. Yeah, you got to pretend to be scared. All right, okay. Very good. Come on over here. So now what we're going to do, now he's still mesmerized. Okay, look over here. You're going to help me give away some stuff. Are you ready? Okay, did you have a question for Dr. Thomas? Because you had your hand raised. Okay, Dr. Thomas, do you still have your microphone? Okay, here we go.
Does alligators and crocodiles eat dinosaurs?
Oh, yeah. So, well, the question would be a past tense question. Did they eat dinosaurs? And the answer is probably they did. But I got to say, they weren't alligators and crocodiles that looked exactly like today's. There were super crocs. We had Dinosuchus, and we had Sarcosuchus. Imagine a crocodile that's as long as this stage, and it had teeth the size of bananas. And so Dinosuchus was the biggest, and he could have eaten anything that it could fit in its mouth. You talk about a world full of monsters. The pre-flood world was bad, and it did have monsters in it, and no wonder God wiped them off the face of the earth so that you could be born and grow up and not be eaten by either T-Rex or Dinosuchus.
That's a pretty good deal, yeah. All right, I noticed that you had the big T-Rex t-shirt on. Is that your favorite dinosaur? All right, good. Now here's my question before we give stuff away. Do you know how a dinosaur roars? Okay, on the count of three, we're all going to count to three, and you're going to give us your best T-Rex roar. Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1. Yay! Give him a big round of applause. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give a few things away, and you're going to be my help, because that way people don't think I'm cheating. Okay? And plus, you're cute, so even if you cheat, they won't care. All right. So I have a random number generator. We've actually numbered all of the Acts and Facts signups. So if you sign up for Acts and Facts, you're entered into this drawing right here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give away Uncovering the Truth About Dinosaurs, that 4-DVD set. I want to give one of these away. So I'm going to have you, there's 31 people on there, and that says 31, right? Does that say 31? Okay. I'm going to have you hit that generate button. You see it right there? All right, what's that number?
27.
27, here we go. Hopefully they have good handwriting. Ooh, can you say that name?
David.
Oh, wow. Aguanaga. Yay, that's him. Yay. We're going to have to ask you to say that last name. How do you say it?
Aguinaga.
That's what I was going to say. There you go. Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. Yay! All right. All right, let's see here. We got some other stuff. What do you think about this one? Let's go Guide to Dinosaurs. All right, Guide to Dinosaurs. We're going to hit that button again. Here we go. What's that number?
26.
Okay. All right, 26. See, I told you. He's cute, though. You can't do anything. So, all right, So 26 is, oh my goodness. Do you people have normal names? What in the world? I bet you can say that one.
Sally.
Carpiek. Carpiek? What is it? Is she not here? Oh, she's not here. Okay, let's do another one. All right, hit that button again. All right, hold on. Now it says 25. Hold on. Hit it one more time. Let's try this again. Oh, no, it's 27. Okay, hit it one more time. Okay, 14. 14. Let's see here. Who's 14? Who is 14? Dave Napier. No. Who's that?
Ryan Piper.
Is there a Piper? Oh, hey. All right. Well, guess what? I think that means that goes to you, young man. Right there. The guy, 2 dinosaurs. So. All right. All right, we're going to give away one other thing. Let's see here. What do we have else? What else do we have? Oh, we have one of Dr. Thomas' book, Why the World Looks So Young. We're going to give one of those away. Hit that button. And that's 4. 4 is... What do you think? Christy Sutton. Yay! Christy's not here. Okay. One more time. Here we go. Okay, 29. 29 is, who's that? Manny Royo? Is it Manny Royo? Royo? Yay, Manny! Oh, he left? All right, okay. All right. If this doesn't work, Pastor Eric's getting this next book, okay? Okay, one more time. All right, 16, here we go. Yay, 16! It is, oh my goodness. Is that Michael Doucette? Yay! Who's that? Oh, okay, good. Mikhail, is it Mikhail? Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. There you go. That's Dr. Thomas's book. You should make him sign it for you as well. All right. He's probably going to need a pen eventually, but hey, last thing, I just want to give away 4 tickets to the Discovery Center. Are you guys okay with that? Okay, 4 tickets to Discovery Center. Here's the last one. If it's your dad, we're going to have to change it. Okay, it's 3. 3, here we go. Wait, 3 is, who is that? What do you think? Bruce Pongborn. Pangborn, thank you. Is Bruce here? Not present. Oh, no. Okay, one more time. You ready? Here we go. Number 11. Number 11 is, ooh, do you know who that is? No. Robert Volel. This is for the tickets. I can't just give these. Forget it. Okay, one more time. Okay, 8. Here we go. Somebody just raise your hand and claim these. Okay, here we go. Darren Douglas. Can you say it?
Darren Douglas.
Darren Douglas! Yay! Hey, here I am! I've never had anybody not. Okay, I don't have the tickets with me, but I'll get with me afterwards, and we'll make sure you get it.
Darren gets his tickets.
Yes, there you go. All right, excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We have so much fun with this. We would love to come back, do more with you guys, but more, we would also love for you guys to come to the Discovery Center. Just like I gave away 4 tickets, it's something that's awesome. You can come see it, go through the exhibit hall, go to the planetarium. It is so much fun, and you'll learn from it, you'll enjoy it, and be engaged by it. And so thank you guys so much. Pastor Eric, do you want to come close out in prayer real quick?
We really appreciate y'all coming out. And I would encourage all the church just to keep him in prayer, especially the attack that they face just publishing the truth. And it is, to me, it's a type of persecution that's even in our homeland. Of course, it's not as severe as what's taking place overseas, but nevertheless, it's something that we should pray for. Anyway, join me in a word of prayer. Father in heaven, God, we thank you for your word, and Lord, for your creation. God, we're just in awe of you. You know the stars by name. That you created the sun to rise upon this planet in just the right space and time, that we don't freeze up or burn up. And yet you know us by name. God, thank you for your great love for us and for all that you have done for us and are doing for us. And Lord, we do lift up ICR to you. Lord, that you would protect them, bless them. You are the author of all wisdom and knowledge. And Lord, we pray you just pour your Spirit out upon them to find out more and more truths, more reality. And Lord, that you would open up new doors for them to declare the truth. Lord, we seek this for your kingdom's cause, that souls would be saved and redeemed from the pit of hell. Lord, as we go about the rest of our days in this coming week, Lord, God, help us to hear your voice more clearly than all the noises of this world and of life, even of our own past. Help us to live for you and to keep our eyes set upon heaven and not on the things of this earth. And Lord, for any that may be hurting or in need, God, I pray that your grace would be poured out upon your people. And it's in Jesus Christ's most worthy name that we pray. Amen. Well, God bless you guys.